Hey guys, I'm coming at you with a whole new type of video. It's going to be my first cake project video. So I've got everything recorded and I went along the process and I explained a few things. I'm going to show you a few things. So I really hope you guys enjoy this cake. It is going to be a St. Patrick's Day themed smash cake, but it's not only just that, it's also going to be a gender reveal cake. So the big brother will be revealing the gender of his baby brother that's soon to come, and it was so exciting and so fun. So here I've got my candy melts melting away, and I needed to make them a darker color, so I went ahead and started melting them. And then I added a little food coloring to get them a more desirable green. And then from there, I kind of rushed the process of letting them set. I popped a couple out and didn't like how it wasn't finished, so I kind of rushed it. And then I went ahead and set it aside and moved on. So here I have a little bit of fondant I'm turning green so that I can roll it out and make my shamrock shape. I typically go for a cutter, a cookie cutter for my shapes, but if I don't have the right size or the right shape, I will go ahead and print out a image. So in this case I did do this for the shamrock, and I also went ahead and made a backing out of packing tape. So that way it didn't stick to the fondant as I cut it out. And then I went ahead and used an X-Acto knife to cut out the shape I needed. This could be a little trickier, and I typically do like to just be able to use a cutter. But this also can get me super exact shapes and really works well with a lot of the projects I've needed to get a more intricate detail. So as you can see here, this technique doesn't leave the cleanest cut. It does take a little hacking away and pulling and stretching, but there's some ways that I clean up and pretty much tighten up the edges and smooth things out. So initially I was going to use this as my face side, and I was going to just try to smooth out the crease. I saw that it still was pretty present, so I went ahead and flipped it and used the back side, which I should have probably done in the first place because it was so much better looking on this side and smooth, and I was actually able to smooth it out even better. I'm just popping in this time to apologize for my off-centeredness. It's probably going to happen quite a bit in this video. This is my first video, like I said, of making a recording of my projects. So it was kind of hard to work on them, see where they were in the camera and whatnot. So I would definitely try to focus on that for the next video. Here is where I'm going to make the letter similar to how I made the shamrock. After making the shamrock, I realized I used too much of that glitter gel. So I went ahead and went a little sparser on the lettering, and I kind of just dragged it out, I think with a toothpick. So yeah, I really wanted more of the sugar to show rather than melt in. So that's why I went a little shadier on the gel for this one. Oh, I used a brush. My bad. So moving back to the candies, they did end up setting very well and solid, and I had made a couple extra to practice with, so you'll see some of my toying around right here. These were two techniques that I played around with. I actually didn't end up going with either one of them. I had a problem with the gold paper because it wasn't a clean edge around the side, so I tossed that idea. And the gold powder had a nice shimmer to it, but it wasn't what I was going for. So I totally ditched both of these ideas, but I figured I'd show you to see what I played with. So switching gears, I went back to my glitter lettering and shamrock. This was a process. I had to reapply the sugar and, kind of dust it away. I really wanted the white of the sugar to stand out, and it was kind of tricky with the shamrock because I did use so much of the gel to adhere it to, and it pretty much melted into it, but it still had a really nice shimmer, and I was really happy with the turnout. At this point, I was pretty happy with my lettering, and I decided to cover it up to keep it somewhat flexible until I placed it on the cake board. And then I went back to these bad boys. At this point, had decided I'm just going to try to coat these in sugar and have them not only match the lettering, but stand out in a better way than what I had tested before. So for this cake project, there was a pot of gold involved. So I'm just starting to make my pot, and you'll see where it goes from there. So for the gold coins, I did opt to use the gold edible paper. Unfortunately, I went about it the wrong way to start. That's why you see all the pieces have little pieces of gold on them. What I did was I rolled out my fondant, put the gold paper on it, and then cut it. And when I did that, it drugged the little bit of paper. It's so fine, it's so thin, and it just drug it all over. So this time I went ahead and just covered it with more gold paper individually, so it worked out well. So I went ahead and made two different types of gold coins for this cake project. the ones that you just saw me make, and then these ones are going to be solid gold with a little bit of gold edible hearts on them. They're pretty cute, and I really love how they turned out. So I produced this video in the order that I've made the cake. That being said, jumping back to these little shamrocks, I think here I was just checking to see how the sugar was standing out on them, and then I think I went ahead and re-added some of the sugar that was hanging out onto them again. Or I think I might have even taken that sugar and put it back on the lettering. I really wanted the sugar to stand out on all the pieces. You might notice that I keep taking the brush to the sugar, and what I'm trying to do is push it away from the center where I don't want it to stick and push it up to the sides where the gel is at. I keep saying, I really wanted the sugar to stand out, and I was just trying to get as much stuck to the gel as possible. Once again, we end up with a little bit of off-camera action here. What I'm doing is I'm shaving off with my X-Acto knife the upper edge of the pot. I wanted a cleaner edge. The one that I cut off was a little more rounded, but I still do kind of pinch it out and round it up a little bit. I really like how it turned out. I tried to make it as smooth as possible, but this would have been harder for me to figure out, and I didn't see any better way than the way I went about it, and I'm still happy with how it turned out. Right here I'm just testing out how the pot of gold would look. I'm trying to see if I have enough coins, just getting a feel for it. The intention was not to use inedible objects on the cake project, so I just used that plastic wrap as a filler for the moment. I did end up balling up some extra fondant and stuck it under the actual coins, just so I didn't have to make a whole pot for just coins. It would have been a lot of work. So I was really happy with the amount of coins I had and the look of the pot of gold. So I was definitely ready to let the pot set and be finished. And in order to do that, I needed it to dry out a lot more. So I took out the insert, I put it on a cooling rack and let full air wrap around it. And then I moved on to putting the hearts onto my other gold coins. Sorry for more off-camera action. It's going to happen throughout, but this kind of was sad because this was kind of cool and you couldn't see the hearts close up, but they were really cute. Here we go. So I went ahead and did a little zoom in action so you can see the hearts a little bit better. So cute. So for this cake, it's going to be a large cupcake mold, and for the base of this cupcake I am making a green fondant. So this is what I'm doing. I'm making the green right here. Speaking of the bottom of the cake, here it goes. It was a super high dome to the top, so I was just looking to see how much I needed to cut off that would be productive. And like I said, this is a gender reveal cake, so the inside is meant to be blue. Unfortunately, I should have used egg whites to make this cake batter. only because the yellow of the yolks really turned the blue into like a greenish blue, almost like a teal. So I'm not super happy with the turnout of the color of the cake, but it's clear that it's blue. So this is where a little bit of my rust was showing. It had been a while since I had iced a cake, and this one, I don't know why, but I went all backwards on it and I put frosting on the top. I typically save the top to frost last, so in case if I have to handle it a little bit more or anything like that, it's a little bit easier to deal with. Plus I forgot to put frosting under the cake board and onto the turntable, so I had a lot of shifting and moving around. So but I ended up getting the desired amount of frosting where I wanted it, and then since this was a cupcake design, I went ahead and drug up my spatula along the ridges so that they would be a little more defined when I lay the fondant over it. Typically, I like to have a way smoother top to the frosting. So I'm trying to achieve that, but then I realized that I was actually frosting the bottom of this cake. So I kind of just let it be, and I just really needed something for my fondant to stick to. So that's what I did, and then I went and refrigerated it until I was ready to cover it, which it looks like I'm doing now. I'm rolling out my fondant to cover the base of the cupcake. I just have to say, this is my least favorite part of any cake project that involves covering with fondant, the rolling out. So what I did was pulled it from the fridge, made sure it was pretty stiff. You don't want it too mushy. And then I went ahead and covered my base and then smoothed it out, and you'll see here. When working with the fondant, you really have to like kind of let it hang and play with it and work with it. So that's all I'm doing is cutting off the excesses, making sure it has a firm attachment to the top, and then you kind of got to just pull it out from itself and then pat it down, start from the top, go into the bottom. So it can take a little bit of work, especially the larger the cake. It really can be a lot of manipulating and handling of the fondant and cutting excess off. I like to keep cutting the excess off because it will drag and pull, and sometimes it can tear the cake, the fondant. So it's definitely, the more you do it, the easier it gets. But even after doing like a billion of them, I still sometimes can goof up. So it's always a relief once the fondant is on the cake, and then the fun parts can like really get going. So I was really happy with how this cake was turning out. The fondant was sticking to the cupcake base very well. But I did want to go in there and define the ridges a little bit more, and then also just make sure it was getting a good stick. So I went and I ran my finger along each of the ridges and just made sure they had a good little look, and made sure everything was sticking and where I wanted it. So for this part, I needed a black fondant. I was making a belt for the base of the cake, which I needed black for. When I make black fondant pieces, I don't mix my own. I did in the beginning learn very fast that it takes an incredible amount of the food coloring to turn any amount of fondant, white fondant, black. So I went ahead and from then on I just kind of buy my fondant black. I have to apologize for the above view of this part of the project. It would have been so much better if I could show you more of a frontal. However, this was my first time doing this type of a project, so I think maybe next time I'll get some different angles for, you know, different parts of the projects. When I typically do my cakes, I really like to decorate every aspect of it. So just here I am just enhancing the cake board a little bit with some of the golden green. So now I'm just doing a little bit of playing with the placement of my lettering, where my cake's going to be. Obviously, that is not the entire cake. I just took the top because the top part has the largest circumference on it. So I went ahead and just placed it on my board to kind of give me an idea of where I could put my pieces. So initially I didn't plan on adding the one, but when I placed my pieces, it was kind of lacking. So I did think that was the perfect place to stick it. So apparently I was rustiest on all the frosting, all the icing of this cake. I had, by this point, went through so many mess ups on the top. I am coming around again, and this time is what I ended up with. I used different techniques and just nothing was really working that I really liked better than this one. I did forget to capture that after letting the icing set a while on this technique, I did go back and pat a lot of the jagged edges that are peeking up from each of the peak. And then I also did go in and fill in with smaller dollops some of the in-between peaks. So I didn't want any gaps. So that was fun. Oh, also my silly self forgot to adhere it down with some frosting. So I had to go back in after, and this was after I let it set a little bit. And I went ahead and had lifted it and got some frosting under it to stick it under. So it was it was kind of a little tricky. Like I said, I had been out of the routine, and I forgot a couple key elements along the way. So here it's a little hard to see, but I am finishing this cake off with a little bit of the gold hearts. Thought it was super cute, and I'm glad I did it. But this is it, my finished project. A little off-centered, sorry.